Dear students, I welcome you to the video 2 of Unit 4 in which we would be covering sampling techniques. This video would probably highlight more on probability sampling. Before I move to probability sampling, let us try to understand what is a sampling design process. Sampling design process is a 5-step process starting with defining the target population. Once the population is defined, we move to step number 2, wherein we try to determine the sampling frame. On determination of sampling frame, the next step is selection of sampling techniques. Once we have selected sampling techniques, we can determine the sample size, and on determination of sample size, we would execute the sampling process. Moving forward, let us try to understand few concepts which are mentioned in the sampling design process. The concepts are: what do you mean by population? Is there a difference between target population and accessible population? What do you mean by sampling frame? What are the different types of sampling technique? How can we determine sampling size depending upon the technique we have chosen? And execution of the sampling process. That is what we talked about. Moving forward, let us try to understand what do you mean by population. Population is a complete set of elements, maybe persons or objects, that possess some common characteristics which are defined by the sampling criteria established by a researcher. That means if I wish to study what are the job prospectus for undergraduate pharmacy students, my population would be all the students who are in the final year of B pharmacy. That is what is called as population. This population is generally composed of two groups. One is called as target population and other one is accessible population. The target population is nothing but, which is in other words also called as the universe, the entire group of people or objects or to which the researcher wishes to generalize the study finding. If you remember my statement, I wanted to find out job prospects for undergraduate pharma students. So my target population will be all the students who are in final year across the country. Here, target population meets set of criteria of interest to the researcher. In this case, researcher's interest was to analyze the perception of job with respect to final year students. Similarly, we move to the second word, which is called as accessible population. What do you mean by accessible? Something which can be covered for the study is called as accessible population. For example, I can have an accessible population of students who are studying in final year of B pharmacy in Ahmednagar district. That is what I can assess as of now is called as accessible population. From the term or the concept of population, let us move a step forward and try to understand sample. Sample can be defined as the selected elements chosen for a participants in a study. People are referred to as subjects or participants. Let me put that into a very simple example. Vijay goes to a market and sees a basket of mangoes. That basket of mango was available at a cost of 1000 rupees a kilo. As a sample, the vendor tries to give a piece of sample to check the taste of a mango. The piece which is given from a mango which is chosen from the basket is nothing but a sample. Sampling is the process of selecting a group of people, events, behavior or other elements with which to conduct a study. Similarly, sampling frame is nothing but the list of all elements in the population from which the sample is drawn. Let me put that into a very simple example. I wanted to find out something from the final year pharma undergraduate students. So my sampling frame would be the list of students available with me, which I've collected by going to every college, is nothing but a sampling frame. From that list, who would be chosen is termed as a sample. So could be extreme in case of certain cases. Sampling frame would be extremely large if population is national or international in nature. Sampling frame is needed so that everyone in the population is identified, and so that they will have an equal opportunity for selection as a subject. Means if I have list of all the final year B pharmacy students studying across the colleges in Ahmednagar district, there is an equal opportunity for that final year student to get selected, and that is why he is included in a sampling frame first. With the concept of population, we move to sampling frame. Let us try to understand the third step. What type of sampling techniques are available? A bird's view says that sampling techniques are classified into non-probability sampling techniques as well as probability sampling techniques. In this video, we will restrict ourselves to probability sampling. These are further classified into four categories. One is called as simple random sampling, other is systematic sampling, stratified sampling, and cluster sampling. Also, non-probability samplings are further classified into convenience sampling, judgment sampling, quota sampling, and snowball sampling. In this video, we would restrict ourselves to study what are the different types of probability sampling. What does it mean as a probability sampling? Let us seek a clarification regarding what is a probability sampling. In general, probability sampling is also called as random sampling. Every element of the population has a probability of being selected for a sample. There is a probability that every element in the population is being selected for the sample. Hence, the first and most important characteristic of probability sampling. Everyone in the population has equal opportunity for selection. Third, probability sampling increases the sample's representativeness of the population. Means whatever is the sample selected, it would be 95% of the population, 95% of cases of the population. Probability sampling decreases sampling error and sampling bias. Moving forward, we have already discussed. Let us look at the zest of what are the different type of sampling techniques available. The first one is simple random, second one systematic, third one is stratified sampling, and the fourth one is called as cluster sampling. Let us try to understand that if we are going to decide upon a sampling size, let us try to understand what are the steps involved, which we have already discussed. First, we need to identify a sampling frame. After identifying a sampling frame, we need to decide upon sample size, and then we need to choose a sampling technique. Means if I want to move forward, I need to know what is my population. From population, I need to understand my sampling frame. From sampling frame, I need to choose my sample. What should be my sample size? I need to decide, and after I choose my sample, I need to choose what is my sampling technique. Let us try to understand the next part. When I talk about sampling frame, which I've already discussed, it is nothing but a complete list of cases in the population. If I want to carry out a research in understanding the students' perception towards MBA, my sampling frame would be all the students of MBA first and second, as well all the students in final year of engineering, as well students studying in pharmacy, as well as commerce and arts. This would be my sampling frame. Similarly, when I talk about sampling frame, after I want to think about the sample size. To decide about sample size, there are two important concepts which everyone should be aware of. One, what is called as confidence level. Confidence level is, that is, it is a level of certainty that the characteristics or objects of the data collected will represent the characteristics of total population. Means, if I say the confidence level of is 95%, it says that out of 100 cases, 95% of the cases will represent the characteristics of total population. Only 5% can be rejected, but generally 95% is taken. If I take 99% as a confidence level, which will tell that if I have a sample of 100, 99% cases or 99 cases will represent the characteristic of total population. Only 1% can be ignored. Therefore, similarly, we need to understand one more concept which is also called as margin of error. Margin of error is also termed as confidence of interval. What is confidence of interval? It is the accuracy you require for any estimates made from your sample. Dear students, while watching exit interview, you might have seen the channel suggesting that party X would get 45 seats. Into bracket, it writes down, it also has a mention plus or minus 4% or 4. What does it mean? It means that if the party is shown 47 seats, plus 4 means it may get 51 and minus 4 means the party may get 43. So the range that the party would have seats would be reflected to 43 to 51. That is what is called as margin of error, or which is also called as confidence interval. What does that mean? That means if you are aware of population size, you know what is your confidence level, and if you are aware of what is your margin of error or confidence of interval, there are n number of sample calculator available which can suggest what could be your sample size. Let us put into this example. If you have a population size of 1000, confidence level 95%, margin of error is of 3%. If you put this value on any calculator, any sample calculator, it will give a sample which would be round about 278. What does it mean? Means from 100,000 population, the sample which I have decided to choose is 278, which is having the confidence level of 95% and confidence of interval is suggested at 3%. That is what we can analyze. Means we have now come down from the population to sample. From the sampling plane I have come down that what should be the number. Now the question arises, how am I going to choose 278 from that 1000 by using different probability techniques? Let us look at the first technique available. First technique we'll try to understand is called as simple random sampling. Means from the list of 1 to 1000, I need to randomly select 278 numbers. How can this random? This can be by picking up the chits or by use of generator of random numbers. And in this case, the only condition is you should get repeating random number. There is no chance that the number is to be repeated. In that case, if I go for that, that is what is called as simple random sampling. Let us put that example in context to our MBA department. MBA first year has 61 students. If I want to go through simple random sampling, of the 61 as a population, I want to have 10 as my sample. Now there is a question in front of me, who are those 10 students whom I should pick? I am having a sampling frame with me, means I am having list of 61 students available with Adav sir. I go tell Adav sir that try to see that I get 5 samples which are non-biased and every number in the list has equal chance of representing the sample. So what he does, he tells Dattu to prepare 61 chits. He prepares 61 chits. He calls his friend and tells that from a box of 61, can you help me to pick up any 10 chits? 10 chits were picked. The numbers were opened. As the numbers opened, it was having a serial number, means these were those 10 students who will be acting as a sample when we are going to choose for a symbol random sample. Similarly, let us try to understand how I am going to choose a sample if it is through a systematic random sampling. What was my example? I said there was a class which was having a strength of 10, population size 100, and sample size I wanted was 10. So 1/10 of the sample, 1/10 is what I got a random number, means between 1 and 5 as a starting point of your selection, I need to find out it should be 1/10. Every 10th number means like 1 to 10. If I have chosen 7, the second sample number would be 7 plus 10 17, 17 plus 10 27, 27 plus 10 37. Likewise, I will get 10 numbers which would be acting as a sample. That is how we need to go for sampling fraction. Now you may have a question, how can we use that for our MBA class? Now my MBA class is 61. I want to get a sample of 10, means 10 is sample size at the numerator and 60 is the 60. For our example, we'll put it as 61/6, means from 1 to 10 I may choose any number randomly. If I choose 2, next number would be plus 6 is equal to 8, next would be plus 6 is equal to 14, means 2, 8, 14. These are the serial numbers I may opt for that as a sample. This is a process of systematic random sampling. Also, we can try to find out what is a stratified random sampling. Stratified random sampling, here the word stratified is derived from strata. Strata is a variable which is considered from a population, and it is a very relevant variable for our study. For example, if I wanted to study the satisfaction of the students on the basis of accommodation in the university, now the variables for my accommodation are they are accommodated either in a single room, shared flats, or private apartments. So these are variables. If 500 students are staying in single room, 800 in shared flat, and in 200 in private apartments, means this is a population of 1500 staying into different types of getting different types of accommodation. I want to have a sample of 300 according to the population percentage of accommodation. I need to calculate. So if the population is 1500 and 500 stay in single room, if the sample is 300, how many of them could be, if chosen from 500, I need to have a sample of 100. That is what 100 plus 160 plus 40 would be required in case of 300 sample. Further, let us try to understand the process in a simple way. Let us look into this one. The first part says, if you see there are group of respondents who are available in three colors: blue, maroon, and black. If I want to create a strata, the variable on which I have created strata is on the basis of color. In the diagram 2, there are three different strata formed. One is of blue color, other is of black color, and the third strata which is formed is of violet color. In stratified sampling, suppose I want to have a sample size of 12 from all the three colors. Randomly I decide to choose 4 of blue color, 4 of black color, and 4 of the violet color, which is to be chosen when I select those colors randomly, a specified color randomly, that is called as stratified random sampling. That is what is called as stratified random sampling. For us to understand, strata is homogeneous, but two stratas would be heterogeneous. That is what we need to put. Homogeneous strata is homogeneous. One strata of blue color, one strata of black color, one strata of the violet color is considered for us to understand. Similarly, the last type of sampling is called as cluster sampling. Cluster sampling is the first target population is divided into mutually exclusive and collective exhausting subpopulation called clusters. Let us try to put that into a very simple way. For example, Pune can be divided into different clusters. Like you have Somwarpet, Mangalwarpet, Budwarpet, Guruwarpet as various clusters. What is that? In one pet, you will have different set of people living together with respect to different age, different caste, different religion. That is what is a cluster. Means one cluster would be heterogeneous. But from that cluster, if I want to take a sample randomly, I may select randomly any one cluster which may represent Pune. That is what is called as a cluster. Concluding, let us try to understand what is the difference between stratified sampling and cluster sampling. More precisely, if you look at stratified sampling, is done on each element in the stratum. Remember the colors. Yes, we have blue colored, we have black colored, we have violet colored. In cluster sampling, cluster is treated as a sampling unit. Somwarpet, Mangalwarpet, Budwarpet, Guruwarpet, Shukrarpet, Shaniwarpet. These are pet. Each pet is considered as cluster, and in every pet there is heterogeneity. That is what we need to understand it as an cluster sampling methodology. With this, I conclude the first part of sampling, which is called as probability sampling. Thank you.